283 strong, okay, mostly conservatives. We sure can't say that, we're Republicans, Democrats, whatever, because we usually have problems with all of the parties and most of the politicians. But we have our meetings here. They're all held here on the second and fourth Mondays of every month. They're all free and they're open to the public. The last time these gentlemen met, you had to go to a pub and pay $25 to hear them. So, free. Huh? So the goal of Redmond Patriots is to promote American exceptionalism through community education. Now, we routinely tackle the issues that other community groups just don't want to touch. Examples: human trafficking, safety in our schools, disaster preparedness, UN Agenda 21, Common Core state standards, illegal immigration, and of course, government and politics. And we're in the political season now, so it's just appropriate that we have these candidate forums. Unlike Tea Party and most patriot groups, even our brethren over in Prineville, we don't engage in protests, rallies, we don't provide any financial support or any other group support for individual candidates or political parties. Instead, we focus on education. We think that's our raison d'être. Here's an interesting thing. Our meetings are safe zones for free speech. Political correctness is way overrated. Okay? You're going to see that tonight, too. We view political correctness as an attempt by self-appointed elites, almost exclusively liberals, folks, to restrict freedom of thought and freedom of expression. It has no place in our meetings, and it doesn't have a place in a free America either. Okay. Every question you hear tonight has come to me from my fellow patriots. And there are some tough questions, but they reflect their concerns, their issues, and they're important to our group. We think they're important to the community in general, too. And if you take a look at Central Oregon and the people that we elect to state office out of Central Oregon, all of them, without exception, have conservative values. Conger and Canuck and Wisnet, but good conservatives. Now, unfortunately, because we had to decide whether we were going to have questions from the floor or pre-submitted, we're only going to have these pre-submitted questions, and there are 31 of them that I've got to get through tonight. They're going to be fairly rigid enforced time allotments, probably not as bad as we had during the Senate debate because we had 3 people there, okay? And we had a lot of questions. And prior to the Q&A portion, we're going to give each of the gentlemen 5 minutes to do their pitch, to tell us why we should vote for them. Now, during the Q&A period, some of the questions are going to require a simple yes or no. And to tell you the truth, I don't want to hear much more than that. It's a simple yes or no question. Some questions will be directed to both candidates, and we'll alternate who goes first on the questions. And there will be a set time limit for those answers. And when a candidate's time is expired, a little ring is going to sound if I can get my phone working. So as in boxing, you go back to your corners. Okay? And we hate to be sticklers on time like that. We've got a lot of stuff to get through. And a lot of areas to limit time. And then following the Q&A period, okay, we're going to have a crossfire. And that was the original idea, to just have the campaign pitches and then have them go back and forth in a crossfire. But we had so much success with the Senate primary candidates doing it with the audiences, pre-submitting the questions, that we really felt as though we wanted to do that again. One last announcement. If you were to look in the dictionary under a valued public servant in Deschutes County, the face of Nancy Blanken. And I think what we're going to have, I think probably a good idea to have Nancy say a few words about the election right before we launch into the crossfire. That'll give both gentlemen a little bit of time to formulate any back and forth that they want to do. Okay, so that's pretty much the setup. I hope I haven't taken too long. Gentlemen, we didn't toss a coin. You know I'm so poor, I'm a Republican, I don't even have a coin. Who has a coin they can throw up in the air? George, you always have money. That's what they tell me. Okay? John, call it. Heads or tails?
Tails.
He says it has a two-tailed corner.
It is tails.
Okay, John, want to go first or second?
I'm going to say it.
Okay, there you go. So that means when we come to the close, you go first, John.
Well, thank you for having us here, and thank you, John, for engaging in this debate. I'm looking forward to your questions. I'm a prosecutor, not a politician. You elected me back in 2010 because you wanted politics removed from the district attorney's office. You didn't want the DA's office being used as a political platform for special interests or as a stepping stone to another governmental position. You wanted your DA focused on the constitutional function of the district attorney's office. You wanted decisions that were based upon the law and justice, not upon self-interest, politicians' whims, special interests, that sort of thing. You wanted to see justice administered fairly. You wanted to see the culture in the district attorney's office changed in such a way that the office would operate more efficiently and more effectively. And I would say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that I have followed through on the commitment that I made to you. I have put together a team of excellent prosecutors and support staff that have focused on doing justice and ensuring public safety without regard to what politicians might say or how it might be reported in the media, with total disregard for special interest, because that's what justice requires. During my administration here, 3.5 years or so, we've had an unprecedented level of success. We've had 1 aggravated murder trial and 4 murder trials during that time, which itself is unprecedented, moving the cases that quickly through the court system. And those trials resulted in 1 aggravated murder conviction and 4 murder convictions. It doesn't get any better than that. We have had an unprecedented level of success with all of the major work that we've done, and for that matter, the minor cases. Our Victims Assistance Program is operating at a much higher level than it ever did in the past. And in part, that is what you will need to pay attention to in making a decision here who to vote for. In fact, I would say the most important factor here is the qualifications of the 2 candidates. What experience do they have? Do they have a record that shows a commitment to public safety and justice? Have they prosecuted murder cases, Major 11 cases? Have they worked with children who've been victimized? Have they showed a commitment to our community? I've been doing this work in the criminal justice system for over 25 years now. 22 of those years right here in Deschutes County. I was a deputy DA for you back in the 90s. I was a chief deputy DA in the 90s until about 2001. And I've had the privilege and honor of serving as your district attorney. And so I would look very carefully at the qualifications and at the record, because the record of the district attorney's office and my personal record as a prosecutor is something that you can verify and is not subject to dispute. And it will tell you that when May 20th rolls around and when you cast your ballots, that you should be checking the box to elect Flaherty. There's a reason why I have endorsements that are very meaningful to me personally in my office, and I believe that you'll find and meaningful as well. They're not just politicians, they're not special interest groups, they're not people from out of Deschutes County. I have the endorsement and support of the Deschutes County District Attorneys Association. Those are my deputy district attorneys. I have the endorsement of my chief deputy district attorneys. The Bend Police Officers Association and the Deschutes County Sheriff's Association have endorsed me because they know what my record is. They work with my office. They know the record of my office. And complemented by that are a number of other endorsements, notably Crime Victims United of Oregon, that nonprofit that pays special attention to whether a district attorney protects the rights of crime victims. So I look forward to your questions, and I thank you for coming this evening.
John, we're going to give you 6 minutes because that's about what John took, or that's about what Patrick took. Please.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes? There you go. Good evening, everyone. Thanks to the Redwood Patriots for hosting this. Patrick, good to see you tonight. Thanks for participating. Everyone here knows Deschutes County is a special place. In fact, it's the greatest place in the country to live. We do things differently here. I think people who have lived elsewhere know that, and all of us who travel know that. Our politicians in Deschutes County aren't like the politicians in Washington, D.C. Thank the Lord. Right? Our politicians, we see them. They're us. They're on our soccer fields. We see them in our churches. We see them volunteering for our nonprofit associations. They are us. And most importantly, we see our elected officials working together with the community to solve our problems. I'm that type of leader. If you elect me as your district attorney, I'll work as part of a team to keep our community safe. I'll work with law enforcement. I'll work with drug and alcohol counselors. I'll work with mental health professionals. I'll work with neighborhood associations. I'll work with elected leaders. I'll work with everyone in this room. Together, we can keep the community safe. No one person can keep the community safe. Not at all. This county is the best place in the country to live, but we still have work to do. Still work to do. Let me tell you a few areas where I think we need to continue to do good work and do a little more. In regard to mental health, we have to work together on this. The sheriff's office and sheriff's deputies in the jail are doing a great job. The Deschutes County Jail is the largest mental health provider in the county. They're doing great work, but we need to do more. We need to do more to make sure that the people in our community who are suffering from mental illness get the help they need, while at the same time, we're keeping our community safe. In regard to drugs, we need to treat people who can be helped by treatment, but we need to punish people who can't, particularly people who are dealing drugs to our kids. In regard to veterans courts, some of you may have heard this, and I reach out to Patrick on this. We both agree that the community needs a veterans court. The short summary of a veterans court, for those of you who don't know, our brothers and sisters who fought for us overseas and risked their life and come home damaged. We see many of them with prosthetics because they've lost an arm, and we need to help them. But some of our brothers and sisters also have mental health issues when they come back, maybe PTSD or drug and alcohol issues they're struggling with. If they have a misstep along the way and get a little sideways with the law, I think we owe it to our brothers and sisters to see if we can help them rather than punish them. I know Patrick agrees with that too. But here's the difference. We've been talking about a veterans court for a while. I'll actually help deliver a veterans court. We don't have a veterans court. I was involved in creating the first specialty court in Central Oregon, the Crook County Drug Court, almost a decade ago now. You create these specialty courts working together as a team. No one person does it. You got to work with the courts. You got to work with drug and alcohol professionals. You got to work with mental health professionals. For a veterans court, you have to work with the VA administration. I'll work together with everyone, and we'll get that court. Other areas where we need to work on. We need a leader in the district attorney's office who understands that the government's money is the people's money. There's been over $1 million of our tax dollars squandered because of management issues in the district attorney's office. That's not going to happen if I'm your district attorney. Another area we need to work on. We need to have consistent application of our criminal laws. Too often in the district attorney's office, how cases are handled is based on the connections they have. We need to trust that our laws are being prosecuted even-handedly, regardless of how powerful you are, regardless of who you know. And finally, we need to work with law enforcement to develop even more innovative and cost-effective crime prevention programs. Our law enforcement are doing great work on that, but we can do even more. The best way to keep a community safe is to avoid crimes in the first place. Well, obviously, if a crime doesn't occur, you're safer than if it does occur, but it also costs less money to prevent crime. Less money keeps you safer. That's a pretty good deal. But for all of those things I just discussed to happen, we need to work together as a community. And we need a leader in the district attorney's office who's out in the community, working together, not saying it's my way or the highway, not looking for the glory, but looking to work as part of a team in the community. I want to be that district attorney, and if you elect me, I'd be honored to represent you. Thank you.
Okay, now we're into the both area. Same question, both candidates. And Patrick, I'd like to start with you on this one. And rather than me explaining Major 11, would you please explain Major 11, how it's perhaps changed, and where you stand on Major 11, and I'll ask John where he stands on it as well. Please?
Sure. Yes, be happy to. So, Measure 11 is the ballot measure that we voted for by almost 80% here in Deschutes County back in '94. It was '94. And what Measure 11 does is it imposes mandatory minimum sentences for the most serious crimes in our community. First-degree sexual offenses, so rape 1, sodomy 1, unlawful penetration 1. Second-degree offenses include rape 2, sodomy 2, unlawful penetration 2, sexual abuse in the first degree. Also under Measure 11 are violent crimes, other violent crimes I should say, assault in the first and second degree, robbery in the first and second degree, kidnapping in the first and second degree, and of course murder, manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide is outside Measure 11 right now. But the policy reason behind mandatory minimum sentences is a decision that we made, that our legislature made, that I support 100% because I've prosecuted the cases I've seen and worked with the victims many times over the last 25 years. And it is that for certain offenses, we do not want the individual to be out in our community for a set period of time. We want to protect ourselves. We want to incapacitate that person, and we accomplish that with Measure 11. One of the reasons Measure 11 came about is because some judges, and of course this is across the state, I'm not saying anything about judges in Deschutes County now, but across the state some judges were imposing sentences that we all believe to be too lenient. On the heels of Measure 11, because it was proven so effective at reducing violent crime in Oregon, we began to enhance Measure 11 sentences, that is mandatory minimums. Jessica's law is a notable enhancement. So when a person...
Can we save that for
Sure.
a specific question on Jessica's law? Your time is almost up.
So to wrap it up on Measure 11, I voted for Measure 11. I prosecute Measure 11 cases. My office, I believe, exercises keen discretion with who we charge with a Measure 11 offense. I know that my opponent here voted against Measure 11 and said he would do so again. And that causes me
Let's hear that from
concern.
him. Let's hear that from him. John, you're up.
Thanks. I wasn't here when we voted on Measure 11. I came to Oregon in '95. Measure 11 is the law of the state. Prosecutors have to enforce the law. Sometimes I get concerned when I hear judges, prosecutors, anyone who's not a legislator talk about their personal opinions about the law. Legislators make law. That's a legislator's job. So I would expect legislators to tell you what they think about law. I want to hear a judge say, whatever the law is, I'm going to enforce it. I want to hear a district attorney say, whatever the law is, I'm going to enforce it. Well, hear me say this. Whatever the law is, I'm going to enforce it. Now, you want to hear my opinion, so I'll give you my opinion on this. Those serious offenses that Patrick shared with you, I have no mercy for people who are doing those things, for adults who are doing those things, okay? Lock them up, no mercy here. I will tell you this, I have a place in my heart for a 15 or 16 or 17-year-old kid who makes a mistake, a silly mistake, but maybe a mistake that, but for the grace of God, many of us would have gone away for a long time for. We wouldn't have been able to get in the military, wouldn't have been able to get into college, wouldn't have been able to get a job, have to be on public assistance our whole life because of something stupid we did. I think there's a place, if the state wants to do it, if all of us voting wants to make a change to Measure 11 for kids, I think that's something we can talk about. But if that doesn't happen, that's the law, and I'm going to enforce it. I'm not going to legislate from the DA's office, just like I don't want a judge legislating from the bench.
Thank you. Okay, John, you get to go first on this one. In a heinous and notorious murder case, would you ask for the death penalty even if you didn't personally believe in capital punishment, which is Oregon law? And furthermore, how do you feel about Governor Kitzhaber not enforcing the death penalty?
Thanks for that question. You kind of got a preview of my answer here. Capital punishment is the law. But implicit in that, too, is capital punishment has a great deal of discretion for a district attorney on whether to impose it or not. What I would do if I was district attorney, and I know Patrick does this too, essentially agree on this, you create a team to make this most important decision. No one person should make this. What's more important than, there's no bigger decision that a district attorney will make, whether to seek to take someone's life. So you do that after a good deal of deliberation with your team, with talking to the victims, talking to the victim's family, talking to law enforcement, looking at the facts, thinking about it. But if you do this study, and at the end of it, you think it's appropriate, yes, I would seek the death penalty. That's the law. And what do I think about what the governor's done? I agree or disagree. The governor has the authority under our Constitution to grant grant pardons and clemencies. I don't think it's appropriate to do it across the board. You have to look at each case individually. If the governor looks at the case and sees there's some particular reason the governor thinks there is an injustice done in that particular case, I think it's appropriate, whether I would agree or disagree with him on any one case. I would say that's an appropriate exercise of his authority to say that any case that comes in front of me, I've already made up my mind, and I disagree with that, respectfully, but I disagree.
Okay, thank you. Patrick?
Well, I have had the experience of prosecuting, being involved in aggravated murder cases from which the death penalty may have been appropriate. I haven't actually taken one of those to court, but certainly we've had that fairly notorious case here, the Guzik case that many of you are familiar with, that's up before the Supreme Court right now for the fourth time, and may very well be coming back for number 5. And I would not hesitate to seek the death penalty in an appropriate case like the Guzik case. In terms of the governor's declaring essentially a moratorium on the death penalty, even in the case at hand over the defendant's objection. He does have the power to do that under the Constitution, the right to do that. I disagree with him exercising that power in that particular case, however. So I think that it's important for everyone to appreciate that when we make a decision about a Measure 11 case or an aggravated murder, what penalty to seek, we're always doing that in collaboration with the law enforcement agencies that have investigated the case. Within the DA's office, we do staff those cases, and I would submit to you that no one has gotten a break or been treated differently based upon any characteristic, whether it's their status in the community, their race, gender. That simply has not occurred on my watch. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, next one. And Patrick, you might as well stay right up. You go first on this one. How do you feel about unionization of district attorney office employees?
I believe that district attorney office employees have the right to form a collective bargaining unit, and I've made my view clear on that. But I think there has been some misunderstanding. And when you refer to employees, I'm assuming that you mean the deputy district attorneys, or if we're speaking just about the deputy district attorneys, it's important for everyone to know that under Oregon law, a district attorney is required to appoint deputies. So when I was elected and went into office with a particular path and laid out for me by the voters, I was required to exercise my right, and in fact the law required me to appoint deputy district attorneys. Now, the deputy DAs have the same power and function that the elected DA has. They can go into court and dismiss a capital murder case if they chose to, without communicating with the elected DA. They have virtually the same power and function as the elected DA, subject only to the DA's direction. And that is why it's so important that DAs be able to appoint deputy DAs that they believe will carry out their policies and objectives, that they believe will be trustworthy and honest in carrying out the will of the voters, because it really goes back to the will of the electorate in the election. They're similar in a way to cabinet members. It's really not a bad analogy. Now, when you ask the question about unionizing, I'm going to clarify my position. Okay, if deputy DAs are forming a union for the purpose of compensation, benefits, that sort of thing, they have a legal right to do that, and there's no contradiction in the law. But every elected district attorney in the state will tell you that deputy DAs must be at-will employees because of that DA appointment authority. And so if the sole purpose for the union is to make them just cause employees, or to take away the elected district attorney's right to appoint or discharge, then I would say that I would have an objection if that's the purpose of the union. But I'll tell you, much has been made about it in Deschutes County after my election, and I think it probably speaks volumes that the Deschutes County District Attorneys Association, that union, is endorsing me. Because that union was never an issue for me. And I just failed to communicate that as well as I might have with the media.
We need to move on.
Thank you.
And that's one of those cases where if you find you want to say more later on, either in your closing, crossfire, or whatever, I hope we're going to have the time to do it. I let you go on there, Patrick, for one reason. I think you weren't politicizing, you were explaining a little bit more. But John, I'm going to give you the 3 minutes that Patrick took. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Patrick and I have different management styles. When Patrick came into the office, he didn't have executive management experience. I do have executive management experience. I've led teams of 40, I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets for years. Here's my management philosophy. When I come into a new organization, I talk to my team, I'll say this. Well, let's make it real. Let's say if I win, I come into the DA's office, I'll say this. Yesterday was the campaign. Today's our first day of working together. Forget about everything from the past. Now let's talk about what we're going to do going forward. We're going to sit down together as a team. We're going to talk about our goals that we'll develop as a team. I'm going to share my philosophy, my vision, my expectations. I'm going to listen to the team, what they want to hear from me, what they want to tell me is important. And together we're going to craft a plan. And we're going to go forward. And if I see a staff member is having trouble meeting the expectations, trouble meeting what they agreed to do, I'm going to sit down with them. I'm going to say, how can I help you? I want you to succeed. How can I help you? And we're going to try to make it work. If eventually, after trying, it's not working, I'm not shy about removing that employee. But how are we going to do it? We're going to talk to the county attorney. We're going to talk to the human resources department. We're going to do it the proper way. And you know what will happen? If we have to remove someone at that point, they won't be able to successfully sue us. I'm not saying they won't sue us. Anyone can sue. I'm saying if they sue us, they're going to lose because we did it the right way. You know what that is? That's an efficient use of our tax dollars. It also saves us money because we don't lose that lawsuit. Patrick will tell you that the employees he fired were bad employees. They needed to go. Well, contrary. We have a letter that Patrick sent to one of these employees. After Patrick was won, the election's in May, but the winner does not take office until January. After Patrick won in May, 3.5 years ago, but before he took office, he sent a letter to one of these deputies, a career prosecutor, great guy. No one has a bad word to say about it. The letter was very short. It said, I won't say the person's name here, but I have a letter. Call the person Mike. That's not their name. Dear Mike, just want to let you know, when I take office, I'm going to be firing you. The reason for that is you supported my opponent in the campaign, and you didn't call me after I won. That's not the way you do business. It might make you feel good, it might make you feel tough, it might make you feel like a good leader. You know what it's going to do? It's going to cost everyone here, all of us, all our tax dollars. And as a result of leadership and management like that, we're all on the hook for over $1 million. You're not going to get that from me.
Okay. This was one of my favorite questions that got submitted. Some of them were pretty good, but this was one of my favorites. Using a 1 to 10 scoring system, 1 being terrible, 10 being wonderful, what is your opinion of Eric Holder's job performance as U.S. Attorney General? And that's a good one, right? You know it's the Patriots out there. And if you had his job, what things might you have done differently? I really need to enforce a 2-minute time limit.
Well, if I go first, that is going to be pretty easy for me to keep to the time limit anyway. I would give him probably a 4, and I really wouldn't date because I have not kept up with the U.S. Attorney's Office and how they've done. I've really been focusing all of my efforts on Deschutes County, and so my opponent could probably speak to that much better. But I would like to take just a little bit of this time to say that, first of all, the letter that he just referenced, and the language that he used, is a complete misrepresentation. And I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail, but I'll also say this. These lawsuits would have been filed and they would have been settled by the state insurance company. They were not lost A federal judge, in fact, agreed with the basic principle involved that deputy district attorneys are at-will employees subject to the direction of the district attorney. That's why he dismissed the county out of the lawsuit, because the county had no authority to exercise any control whatsoever over the deputy DAs. And it also demonstrates that my opponent here doesn't understand that this is a state office. The county attorney is not someone that the district attorney can work with or talk to about deputy district attorney employment issues, because for purposes of employment law, they are state officers, just like the district attorney.
Okay, we got a little bit sidetracked on that, but I understand the rationale. You got a number for me?
Yeah, I do. I want to respond to that second. Only in bizarre land can a $750,000 verdict to a plaintiff be a win for a defendant. Those three people were fired. They got a $750,000 verdict, and Patrick wants to tell you we all won. Well, let's go out and celebrate after, okay? That was a loss to the taxpayers. Now, the question about Holder, we got two answers on Holder. How the Attorney General handles criminal prosecutions seems like he's doing well enough. I don't know the details of that. But how he's handling other stuff, well, actually, no. How he's handling courtroom prosecutions, in court, he and his staff, seems fine. I'm not in those federal courtrooms, so I can't really tell. So I'll just say I don't know about that. But on other stuff here, got two things. The gun running investigation was absolute shambles. He put our country at risk by putting guns out on the street with illegal criminals down in Mexico to try to make an arrest. Well, there's a time and a place for doing things like that, but it's not giving guns to criminal gangs in Mexico. So he exercised extremely poor judgment on that. And his decision with President Obama to not defend gay marriage laws, not defend the defense of marriage, I disagree with that. I'm going to tell you this, I am a big proponent of gay rights, a big proponent of that. But I'm not the lawmaker, and President Obama is not the lawmaker, and Attorney General Eric Holder is not the lawmaker. Their job is to defend our laws. That's why I disagree with the Attorney General of Oregon, who said she's not going to defend the law in Oregon that says gay people cannot marry. I disagree with that law. I am a big proponent of gay rights, but I do not like it when an Attorney General decides she is going to be a legislator. She is going to decide what the law is. That is not the Attorney General's job in this state, and it's not the U.S. Attorney General's job. So on Holder, on that stuff, I give him a 2.
A 2, okay, we got a number. Okay, now, I'm going to editorialize just because I can. Holder lost me completely, and I think he lost a lot of other patriots. When he looked at that videotape in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and he saw those guys with their nightsticks keeping Americans from voting, the new Black Panther movement, and he refused to prosecute them, he lost me completely. Okay? I personally would give him a -10. Okay, that's enough of that. I had too much fun with that. I told you I liked that question. Okay, John, I'll start with you. What is your attitude towards, and I'm going to put this, there's 2 questions here, I'm going to mix them together. What's your attitude towards private citizens being armed for their own protection at home and in public? And do you believe that law-abiding citizens should be free to select the firearms based on their own needs and without government interference as to the magazine size or the appearance of the firearm?
Thanks for the question. I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, but what does that mean, right? Well, can a citizen own a gun? Yes. That we needed to overturn that decision, that case out of D.C., where Washington, D.C. basically said no gun ownership. That's a clear violation of the Second Amendment. I don't know what could be more clear. I don't support laws like that. I support the right of the citizens to arm themselves, to protect themselves, to act in self-defense. Absolutely. no argument. Well, you gotta look at the facts of every case, but generally, self-defense, citizen, arming themselves, absolutely. Open carry laws, I support open carry laws. If you have a right to arm yourself, you have a right to carry. It's actually safer when people are carrying openly than concealed. We allow concealed weapons permits, I support that. But if we allow concealed weapons permits, I don't see why we wouldn't allow open carry. Now, magazine capacity, I do support restrictions on magazine capacities. I don't know what the right number is. I'd have to look at that more. But I don't think, I've never known a hunter or someone who's defending their house who needs, capacity of 20, 25. I don't know what the right number is. I haven't given it enough thought, but there is some limit where I would say that makes sense to me. On the gun show issue, I support fixing that. If we all agree that we don't want mentally ill people to own guns, and we don't want felons to own guns, and I assume most of us will agree with that, and we all agree with the law that says if you go to Walmart, we're going to check you to make sure you haven't been mentally committed or you're not a felon, then why would we say if you go to the Deschutes County Convention Center here for a gun show that we don't do the background check on you? So background checks at gun shows I support, and a limit on magazines. I don't know what that number is, but I support open carry, self-defense, and the right of people to own guns.
Okay, Patrick?
Thank you. I certainly am a proponent of all the amendments of the United States and Oregon Constitution. It's one of the reasons why the DA appointment authority is important to me. But I certainly, I do support self-defense, carrying firearms openly, concealed if the person has a concealed handgun license. I believe that the regulations that are in place now, all the firearms regulations in Oregon, are appropriate. I don't believe that they're overly restrictive. I would oppose any effort to restrict them further. I'm personally familiar with shooting incidents where it had the person defending themselves or third person not had more than 10 rounds in the magazine, they would have been unsuccessful. Let's put it that way. So I don't see a logical relationship between magazine capacity and the concerns that we have about people getting a hold of firearms. It's also true that there are millions of high-capacity magazines in existence, and we know that criminals will always get their hands on the AK-47 with the 30-round magazine, and sadly enough, if some mentally disturbed young person really wants to get a high-capacity weapon, banning them is not going to prevent them from doing that. There's simply too many firearms and magazines in our country.
Okay, might as well stay right there. Thanks for not using the whole time. I'm not familiar with this case, but it came from one of our pictures. Because teenagers will be teenagers, and the scene unfortunately may repeat itself, how would you handle the case of the teenage boys who were racing their cars against two girls who were also racing? The girls lost control due to no action on the part of the boys and were killed. Mr. Dugan, the former district attorney at the time, claimed that the boys were at fault just because they were racing and chose to punish the boys to the fullest extent of the law. One of the boys spent at least 6 years in jail. Would you repeat Mr. Dugan's choice of punishment in a similar circumstance?
No. Well, this is a good question to talk about prosecutorial discretion and why it's so important that you have as your district attorney an experienced prosecutor and not someone that has absolutely no experience whatsoever as a prosecutor. It's also important that you have someone in this office that does not just mechanically apply the law, which is what happened in the Black case that the Patriots referred to, listening to the facts. Because in that particular case, there were a number of opportunities, and in fact, my predecessor it was suggested to him, I happen to know, very strongly that he change his mind. And the prosecutors were required to go forward, and the judge had no choice. But that has not occurred on my watch and will not occur.
That's
on my
right.
watch.
Well, this is going to be the easiest question tonight that we both get. I absolutely disagree with that decision. That was a dark day in this county, and that was handled inappropriately in that case. You can't ruin a kid's life for a mistake like that. Just disagree with it.
Isn't it nice to have people that agree? Let's see if we can agree with the next one. And John, I'm going to start with you. What is your position on legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes? And goes on. Do you agree with Obama, who commented, quote, pot is no worse than alcohol, end quote, or with the National Institutes of Health, which states, quote, the toxic effects of cannabis on the brain may result in impaired neurophysiological functioning, poor academic performance, and subsequent school dropout. Where do you stand on legalization?
Okay, thanks for the question. You've heard me say this a few times, and might be sound like a broken record, but I believe it in my core. The district attorney does not make the law, just like a judge does not make the law. Whatever you, whatever we, whatever the state decides in regard to marijuana, that's what me and my office will enforce. It seems like we might have a ballot measure in November on this. If we do, we'll have the debate, and we'll vote, and we'll decide. Whatever the result is the result. What I have said is this. When I talk to people about marijuana, what I'm hearing is there is some, transition in the country, primarily with young kids, less so with older. But I think we all agree on this. The concern with marijuana, like any drug, is are kids using it, and are people driving under the influence of it? You know, right now marijuana is illegal, and we got a problem with kids using it and people driving. If we legalize marijuana, no one's saying legalize it for kids. So kids, it will still be illegal for them to have it, and it'll still be illegal for people to drive under the influence. Those are the two biggest problems, kids and driving under the influence. We don't have enough money for enforcement for our current drunk driving laws, and we don't have enough money for programs for kids so we can get them on the straight and narrow so they don't need drugs to begin with. So if we as a community decide to legalize marijuana, we better put that money to youth programs to get these kids straight and to law enforcement for impaired driving enforcement.
I'm trying to learn how to use my phone in case anybody Wait. I'm about ready to turn it off and use my head. I am. There it goes. Thank you, Lord. Patrick, please.
So I will answer the question, because I didn't hear my opponent answer it. I oppose the legalization of marijuana. Now, he's correct that the district attorney doesn't make law. He said this more than once in a couple of different ways. He doesn't legislate from the office. But again, that comes back to the concept of prosecutorial discretion. It's just like a Measure 11 case. It's not that simple. He doesn't understand it because he's never been a prosecutor. He's never led prosecutors. Every case that comes into the office, your DA has a decision to make about whether to file that particular crime. It's completely up to the district attorney. Doesn't matter what the police arrest the person for. If you take an approach like my predecessor did, and you just black and white, if the facts fit the crime, charge it, it's Measure 11, never negotiate it. That's how you have gross injustices take place, like the Black case. I would oppose and vote against legalizing marijuana because I know the damage that it does to our youth. I know that it will, in fact, result in an increase in drug or marijuana DUIs. Colorado has seen that already, and so has Washington. And of course, that means there'll be more vehicular assaults and vehicular homicides. And I know some of you here have been out on scenes like that. I don't want to see more carnage on our highways because people are impaired. I'm particularly concerned right now just with the availability to youth. I mean, we have the Medical Marijuana Act. If that's regulated, that is the law. We know in the city of Bend right now, we have some of the dispensaries that are in violation of zoning restrictions. That's not going to be a district attorney function to fix that. That'll be up to the city to take care of that. But if marijuana is legalized, access will go up. Children will have more access, and it is extremely baleful and harmful for our youth.
Okay.
Repeated studies that show that.
Thank you, Patrick. And in all honesty, in all fairness, John, did you want to spend another 30 seconds and talk about it more, or are you fine with it? Fine with it. Thank you. Now, this is a yes or no, and that's what we want, a yes or no. Starting with Patrick. How do you feel about trained school employees or trained volunteers carrying guns on school grounds when the local police cannot provide a school resource officer? Yes or no?
Yes, qualified.
Quick qualification, please.
Quick qualification is there's no reason why the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, DPSST, the same agency that certifies police officers, security guards, and others, couldn't put a program into place. And if we had that DPSST certification, I would be supportive of it.
Okay, good. John?
I don't support guns on school campuses.
Okay. So I go to the school and I see a gun-free zone, and if I'm a criminal, man, I got an open hunting season. Isn't that the alternative, though? But I understand your point. Thank you so much. Now we go back to Jessica's Law, John. It was enacted in 2006. The House vote was 54-6. The Senate vote was 30-0. It required a 25-year mandatory minimum sentence for adults convicted of raping, sodomizing, or sexually penetrating a child under 12 years of age. And why did you oppose that?
Yeah, this is real interesting. I assume this is related to what Patrick mentioned at the last debate. This is an interesting story. When I started as a public defender, a criminal defense attorney, then I opened up my own private law firm with 2 colleagues. For 6 years, a part of my practice was as a government relations professional. I represented small trade associations throughout the state who had issues they wanted addressed in Salem. One of my clients was the Trade Association for Criminal Defense Attorneys, and they would hire me to go to Salem and advocate on their behalf. One of the bills they wanted me to advocate on was that bill. That association's position was they were against that bill. Patrick slammed me trying to suggest I was against that bill because I made an argument on behalf of my opponent. But here's the real thing. I'm glad you're all sitting down. When Patrick was criticizing me at the last debate for doing that, what he didn't share was he was paying my salary. Patrick was a dues-paying member of the association that I represented. The dues he paid went to pay my salary to represent the position of that association. And now he comes here and says, how dare Hummel personally have that position? Who says an attorney personally represents the views of, when I represented someone who committed a murder, was I in favor of murder? That's ridiculous. I made an argument on behalf of the client that he was a member of, that he paid dues to, and his dues paid my salary. So it's just absurd. It's only in politics can this twisted thing come out, but this is politics, unfortunately. Patrick likes to say he's not a politician. I tip my hat to him on that. That's one of the better political little tricks you'll ever hear. It's shameful. It's shameful.
Okay, Patrick?
don't remember that 3-word phrase that he used for lobbyist. Okay, but he was a lobbyist for the Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. And as a lobbyist for the Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, he opposed Jessica's law. And I don't know if you know who Jessica was. It's a little girl from Florida, 9-year-old, that was sexually assaulted and buried alive. And that raised such an uproar throughout the country that our legislature immediately acted to enact that mandatory minimum. But my opponent also lobbied against other measures that would protect us from child sex offenders. He argued against and opposed extending the statute of limitations for child sex offenses. He argued and opposed laws that would have made it more, that would have enhanced law enforcement's ability to investigate DUI drug offenses. And it really is completely consistent for a politician to get up and make the pitch that he just did. He's very polished with it. I'm a prosecutor. Yes, for a period of time when I was in private practice, as probably just about everyone doing criminal defense work, I was a member of OCDLA. Did I oppose Jessica's law? Absolutely not. I can guarantee you that my wife, who's a member of OCDLA, most certainly would have supported Jessica's law as well. Because we both prosecuted those cases. I've worked with the victims. He never has.
Okay, this is one of those perfect things that if you want to discuss it later on in Crossfire, wide open, you can see the audience interest. Now, because we have more, I think that's the end of my both questions, and you're probably happy about that. but since I have more questions from the Patriots for John, I'm going to go first, and I might do 2 in a row on some of these things, just so we're balanced. I'll never claim to be fair and balanced, but at least I'll try to balance. And this is one of those questions, John, that it was asked by maybe 5 or 6 Patriots, all in little different ways, and I've tried to put them together. And I'm going to lead off by quoting what you said earlier today, that Deschutes County is the greatest place in the country to live. I happen to agree with you. Do you really believe, and this is also politically incorrect, there's your warning. Do you really believe that working for the United Nations and the Jimmy Carter Foundation in Liberia, a war-torn third world country, provides you with relevant experience and sufficient knowledge to be Deschutes County DA? And what motivation made you leave Central Oregon and travel to Liberia in the first place? And I've messed it all together. Do you admire Jimmy Carter, who is considered by many people in this room to be the second worst U.S. president in modern history?
I think there's about 4 questions there. I'll rush through it. I wish I could do them all at a time. I didn't work for the UN, so whoever got that wrong. I'll tell you why I left Deschutes County, why I did that work. But let me tell you why I came back. I came back because this is my home. Lived here since 1996. Had my first professional job here. Started a law practice here. Bought my first home here. My friends for life are here. This is home. This is home. I left because I had a passion inside to live and work internationally. If I didn't pursue it when I was young, before I had a wife, before I had kids, I might lose the opportunity to do it. So I did. I worked overseas. I helped a war-torn country, as the questioner said, rebuild their justice sector. Liberia was devastated after a brutal 15-year civil war. All the cops, prosecutors, judges, lawyers were killed. My team was invited in. I led a team of 40. We trained police officers, we trained prosecutors, we trained judges, how to run a functioning justice system. The United States has the greatest justice system in the world. And it's not perfect. We can get better. But it's the greatest justice system in the world. And Liberians recognize that. and they called us in to help them, and I was proud to help them. And you know what? I worked for President Carter. He's the greatest former president we've ever had. We could talk forever about how he did as a president. As a former president, we can all be proud of what he's done around the world to deliver peace, justice, and health. And you know what the questioner didn't ask? Probably because they didn't know. Whoever the questioner, I'm not criticizing you, because probably didn't know this. I also worked for George W. Bush, okay? I worked in the executive office of the president, in the office of the United States Trade Representative. I helped edit reports that President Bush sent to Congress, international trade reports. That tells you a bit about me, okay? I look at the job at hand. I don't look at the label. I enjoyed that international work. I believed in George W. Bush's position on international trade, so I was happy to do that job. I believe in what President Carter is doing, delivering peace, justice, and security to Liberia. I was proud to take that job. I'm not embarrassed about it. It's absolutely relevant to keeping this community safe as we all struggle to do that. Thank you.
Okay, another editorial comment from me. I will be very proud of Barack Obama when he's a former U.S. president. I know my audience don't like. Okay, I'm going to stay with John for a second, because that was just too easy of a question, right, John?
Well, that's my life. I can't get rid of what I did. Yeah.
Should the district attorney of Deschutes County have total control over which lawyers are hired to work for him in the DA office? And you've stated, if elected, you do not anticipate any staff changes at the DA's office, and the current staff is, in your words, doing great work. Am I quoted that correctly?
That's right.
Okay, now let me go on.
Sorry.
So do you continue to have a favorable opinion of staff? Yes, okay? If yes, shouldn't the voters interpret that doing great work as a testimonial to the leadership qualities of the incumbent DA, Mr. Flaherty, or perhaps even his house team?
Thanks for the question. The deputy district attorneys are doing great work in spite of the leadership. How's it been the last 3 years? Over $1 million cost to the taxpayers? Is that working out pretty well for you? If you're all happy with that, let's keep on going. It's great.
Okay, that's enough.
If you're happy with the results, then obviously if you're happy with the results, you're not going to vote for me. Look, we should have a leader who has an ability to have a good staff and also not cost the taxpayers over $1 million because of management problems. All right? The staff is excellent. I've worked with many of them. I don't know all of them. The ones I don't know, I've asked around about and heard good things about them. So I'm not going to be making any changes. One, even if I didn't like someone, that's not the case right now, but if I didn't like someone, I suggested this before, if I go in and fire them, because I'm the boss, there's a new sheriff in town, hey, I'll feel good, maybe. They'll sue us, the taxpayers, we'll lose, and we'll pay. Okay, that's not my management style. Sometimes you want to be tough as a leader somehow, because you're the boss. Well, you need to check your ego and understand you're there for the community, and you have to remember that the government's money is the people's money. I'll respect our tax dollars, and I will manage that office appropriately. And the staff is good right now, as I said.
Okay. Well, we as taxpayers are glad to hear that the staff is good. I think Patrick's ready. Are you ready, Patrick? You're chomping at the bit over there, aren't you?
Yeah, I'd sure like to respond to that.
Well, you will. You'll have time during crossfire.
Okay.
And you may have some questions that edge around it coming up. I start, my career was business, and I had a very wise boss at one time. And he told me a leader will be judged in large measure on three things: who they hire, who they promote, and who they fire. You've been criticized mostly by our friends at the Bed Bulletin for the staff terminations you made early in your tenure and the cost of the result of lawsuits. What's your response to this criticism? Does that handle what you wanted to say?
It does, thank you. Because my opponent didn't answer the question that was put to him. Again, I'd say, I'm a prosecutor, he's a politician. There were 3 deputy DAs that filed a lawsuit because they believed that they were entitled to their government job. I did not appoint them. One of them lied to an elected district attorney during an internal investigation, and he terminated her. Another lied to me during the application process. And a third caused 5 young female promising prosecutors to leave the district attorney's office because she created a hostile work environment and engaged in sexual discrimination. None of you in my position, understanding the obligations of the DA, would have appointed them. He's suggesting that he would have brought them on board. And he keeps talking about his management style. You know, that's all over the place. If you want to look at tax dollars, look at what my opponent did when he was on the Bend City Council. Okay, and that was not state tax dollars that came out of the state insurance fund. Those were City of Bend tax dollars. And it's in the millions. He was the only attorney on the board that we could talk about the buses, we could talk about Juniper Ridge, we could talk about the Bend Bulletin property. The deal he worked out because he thought that's where they built City Hall. That was one of his great management decisions. We could talk about the fact that he was a leading edge of the trio that fired Larry Patterson. Those of you who know Larry Patterson, who'd been a city manager, kind of like a chief deputy for the city for about 20 years. And after that, he went through a couple more city managers. No one has ever been terminated on my watch because I need to show I'm a big shot or something. I lead by example in the courtroom. I have the respect, and I respect each one of my staff. And all you need to do is talk to one of them. And that's what you'll hear.
I can't believe I want to retire this phone. Technology and Bob just don't work too well together. Patrick, you took my next question for John, and I'm looking it over and seeing if I kind of want to leave that question alone and just let John respond to what you said, and then I'm going to let you give a real quick response to John's. How's that sound?
Sounds fair.
Thanks. Seems like we're going to keep talking about these lawsuits, but we didn't pick the question. So Patrick wants to stand here and say he did nothing wrong in these lawsuits. Okay? No one in this room was intimately involved with those lawsuits. I wasn't intimately involved with these lawsuits. Patrick was, so he thinks he can just tell you the way it is, and that's the way it is. Well, let me tell you the way it is, okay? There's something called a nuisance lawsuit. Some business people here might be familiar with this. Someone sues you for $25,000. You think it's a bogus lawsuit. You want to defend it, but then you look at the cost of defending it. And you might say, well, the attorney's fees to defend this lawsuit are going to be $50,000. They're only asking for $25,000. It's a ridiculous lawsuit, but it makes business sense to settle it. So we'll just settle it, okay? Even though the person, then you can stand up after and say, the person was lying, none of it was true, we just had to settle it. Let me tell you this, there are not nuisance settlements for $750,000. This settlement was for $750,000. It's settled, and now Patrick just comes out here and says, they were all lying, they all made it up, it's all not true. People don't settle lawsuits for $750,000 if it's not true. Now you can get up there again and say it's not true. Well, guess what? That's what lawsuits are for. The parties got together, and that's the settlement they agreed upon. And we can talk about my time on the city council. Patrick mentioned the 4 issues. I'm not going to have time to talk about it now. If we have time later, I'm happy to talk about it.
Excuse me. That's what I thought you were going to address, so I'm going to ask a specific question.
Again, good. Okay.
You claim that you would be a better manager than the current DA. Your record on the Bend City Council calls this claim into question. We'll start with the used lemon bus fiasco. You were on the then city council when the city purchased used buses, many of which turned out to be lemons. The decision which you supported vigorously was an expensive bus or bust. Explain why you agreed to this purchase even when competent mechanics warned against doing so. And isn't it, would you stop it? And isn't it reasonable to assume that the bus plan should have been funded by new taxes, or did you think the taxpayers might not be in favor of paying for the buses, and that you were wiser than they were, knowing what's best for the community? And that's one part, that's the lemons. In addition to the lemons, how can we forget the financial losses incurred by Ben on the old Bulletin property and the debacle that we're still living with in Ben, known as Juniper Ridge? How do you justify these poor decisions and make us believe you'll be a good manager of taxpayer dollars?
How much time do we have?
I'm going to give you 2 minutes.
I gotta be quick here, sorry. I'm gonna go really fast. The buses. Business owners came to us, and advocates for workers came to us and said, we have a problem. Housing expenses are so big and expensive in Bend that workers for hotels, wait staff, hotel maids had to live far outside of town, but they often didn't have transportation to get in. So people said, we need a bus system. And they said, here's how you can do it. Raise taxes for it. Mayor Friedman and I said, we agree we need a bus system, but we don't agree on the new taxes. Mayor Friedman and I spent a few months going through every line item of that city budget up in the finance officer's office, and we found out a way to get a bus system for no additional dollars. Part of the component was buying used buses. I disagree. We didn't get a call from a mechanic in advance that the buses were lemons. If we had, we wouldn't have bought them. But I'm ultimately responsible for that. We bought lemon buses. They didn't work out. And you know what happened? We pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps. We got new buses, and to this day, we have a functioning transit system in Bend for no additional tax dollars. The Bulletin property, I supported buying that property, and I supported putting City Hall on it. I lost that vote. My colleagues did not want to put City Hall on it. They purchased the property, voted against putting City Hall on it, and then held it. And now just sold, or they haven't just sold it, they're about to just sell it at a loss. So I lost that vote. I wanted to build City Hall on it, but I lost that vote. And the third thing, Juniper Ridge. Here's what we wanted on Juniper Ridge. City could have sold that quickly. City-owned land, could have sold it quickly, turned a profit. What we would have gotten is the same type of development we were getting in Central Oregon at the time. What people were telling us were, we need a different type of development. We need to increase wages in this community. There are a lot of low-wage jobs. We need to increase wages. So we thought that we could build a world-class development that would attract employers who would pay higher wages. To do that, it takes time. You can't do a development like that super quick. It takes time. Well, because it took time, we butted up against the biggest recession in our lifetime. And you know what? The city lost money on a real estate deal in the mid-2000s or late 2000s in Central Oregon. We weren't the only people who lost money on a real estate deal. But that property's still there, and I'm confident that over time it'll be something that we can be proud of. So it didn't work at the time. I don't apologize for trying to raise the wage base in this community.
How many people in the audience think that that's where the OSU should be? Okay, this is for Patrick. And
Should be in Redmond.
it's in Redmond. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Boy, he's always the mayor, isn't he? Okay, Patrick, at the Ben Chamber debate, that you had to pay $25 to get into the pub. Mr. Hummel stated that the city of Redmond had the highest rate of theft, I think that was the word, compared with similar-sized cities in Oregon. He seemed to lay this problem right at your feet. City sources have advised us that Redmond's crime rate is decreasing, we're glad to hear that, and compared with the activities of the Redmond Police Force, the Redmond civic and business leaders, what is a reasonable role for the DA's office in the area of local crime prevention? And any comments you want to make with regard to Redmond in specific, since we live here.
Yes, absolutely. I live here too. So, the Redmond Police Department is an outstanding law enforcement agency that has been underfunded for some time. And I've always advocated every opportunity for Redmond PD to get more resources. I know, though, that much like my opponent here only wants to talk about the lawsuits because that's all he's got. He doesn't have any experience as a prosecutor. And it shows with the way he's bringing that issue up. He's actually put that in his voters pamphlet. And said that's helpful for Deschutes County, which, by the way, is not his home. This is my home. I was born and raised in Oregon. I'm a second-generation Oregonian. I raised my son here with my wife, who's back there. We've been here for 22 years. That's what I call a home. His home is on the East Coast. What I'll tell you about Redmond is that the trend, and this is what is frustrating about his assertion, the trend in Redmond has been going down since I took office in 2011. Each year, the property crime rate has gone down. So, to the extent it's relevant for the district attorney's office, it's quite clear we're doing good work. And I'll tell you, our relationship with Redmond, as with all the agencies, is outstanding. We come to Redmond every week to attend detective briefings. We recently put an individual in prison where he belonged for a case that was, for the most part, a Redmond case. Went to prison for 100 months. Incorrigible property criminal. And that was working with a couple of the Redmond detectives extensively for a long period of time. So I guess the takeaway, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Your district attorney's office is working diligently and has a great relationship with every police agency. Before you buy what he's selling, talk to a police officer. Talk to a Redmond police officer. If you have a question about Redmond, they will tell you the truth, exactly what I'm telling you. We're doing the best we can right now, they will say. And I will put it back to the city council at that point to look at whether they can fund more. I know Redmond recently was able to add an officer to code, the Central Oregon Drug Enforcement Team. That's going to have an impact in Redmond. I know Redmond PD's done great work with their street crime unit too, and that no doubt is responsible for that downward trend. Okay, and I think just the chief's done a great job with proactive law enforcement as well. So no misunderstand me, I'm not taking credit for the downward trend. I'm just pointing out that the representation being made here in the voters pamphlet and this literature is that somehow the DA is responsible for the theft rate in Redmond. And that just simply is not true.
Okay, regardless of what my phone's doing, we have to move on. This is for John, and it just might be the singular most important question I asked tonight. Most of your trial experience has been on the side of the defense, not the prosecution. What can you tell us to prove that you, lacking U.S. prosecutorial experience, will have the background knowledge and wisdom to make proper judgments that improve public safety? For instance, whether to recommend drug user rehabilitation or criminal prosecution. It goes on. The March 5 issue of The Source, which we all read diligently, right? They're the ones that should have gone bankrupt. States, as opposed to Hummel, who most characterize as progressive and who lists rehabilitative services as opposed to Measure 11's throw away the key attitude as an important plank of his campaign. Do you consider yourself to be a progressive? Are you going to remember all these questions, John? And how do you convince voters that your communities will be safer with you, not Mr. Flaherty, as a district attorney? Do I need to go over those one by one? You're so good. You really do know.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. And I just have to respond. I don't know what Patrick's talking about when he says Deschutes County is not my home. I think I'm tired of these personal attacks in politics. I think you all are.
Can you say that for the crossfire?
Well, no. My opponent just said Deschutes County is not my home. I've lived here since 1996. That's despicable. But the question about I've not been a prosecutor, that's absolutely true. Just like Patrick wasn't a defense attorney after he left the district attorney's attorney's office and he immediately started defending cases. Well, there's a lot of people who are defense attorneys who say, I can never be a prosecutor. And there's a lot of prosecutors who say, I can never be a defense attorney. There's those camps out there. They're just only on one side or another. And then there's people who can do both. I always respect the people who can do both because it tells me you respect our system. Our system is a police officer investigates the case, he arrests the person, brings him in front of a judge, a defense attorney represents the defendant, a prosecutor prosecutes, judge and jury listen to the facts, and the judge renders the sentence. If you believe in that system, which I do deeply, if you believe in that, how can you say one doesn't matter? I don't think that's right. For 12 years, I was a criminal law trial attorney. I was in court every day. In Oregon, we don't have prosecution law and criminal defense attorney law. We have Oregon criminal law. I understand Oregon criminal law. I understand Oregon criminal procedure. I practiced it every day for 12 years in court. Asked the judges I appeared in front of, asked the deputy district attorneys and the district attorneys who were on the other side of me about my skill. I have the Oregon criminal trial law skills to do the job. But then, ask yourself, do I want to do it? Some people, I said, criminal defense attorneys don't want to do it, just like some prosecutors don't want to do it. Patrick and I are similar on this. After he was a deputy district attorney, he became a criminal defense attorney for years, and was a good one. I think criminals who commit crimes need to be prosecuted and held accountable. I also think if someone says they didn't commit a crime or they're accused, they deserve to have representation who argues for them. You need a strong prosecutor, you need a strong criminal defense attorney, and that's going to produce the most just and fair result. So how can I do it? I've got the skills, I got the experience, I believe in our system, and I want to do it. That's how.
Okay. I'm going to continue with you, John, because I think this question kind of ties in with the last one. You appear to consider one of the top priorities of the DA job to be listening to the community. You call it community consensus building. That sounds to us like you want to change the focus of the DA from being prosecutorial and protecting the people to a public relations effort. And you specifically mentioned your intent to work with nonprofit community organizations. Do you consider occupants of the leftist-leaning social justice offices, such as the unions, the immigration lobbies, the attorneys, and the Human Dignity Coalition, and the gay rights organization to be important? And if so, why?
Everyone in the county is important, and no, we're not trying to change the focus of the office. We're trying to make sure the focus of the office is correctly understood. The district attorney should be a community leader for public safety. One way to keep a community safe is to prosecute people who commit crimes. My office will do that. Have no fear. If people commit crimes, my office will prosecute them. Another way to keep a community safe is to work with the community to develop innovative crime prevention programs where safer crimes aren't committed in the first place. Now we're already doing that. Law enforcement, drug and alcohol counselors, mental health professionals, neighborhood associations, city councils, county commissioners are all working on innovative crime prevention programs. I'm saying the district attorney needs to be a key part of that team. The district attorney and his deputies need to be a key part of that team. So when I talk about consensus building, working as part of a team to prevent crimes, that's what I mean. And you mentioned 4 or 5 groups. Every group, I'm not going to exclude anyone. We're stronger working together to prevent crimes in this community. So, no, I'm not reinventing the job, because the job is public safety. You keep a community safe by preventing crime, and you keep a community safe by prosecuting crimes once they occur. So no, I won't be reinventing.
Okay, Patrick, your turn.
Thank you.
County commissioners voted for a temporary moratorium on the establishment of medical marijuana dispensaries in unincorporated areas of Deschutes County. Redmond has already adopted a similar measure. You provided testimony to the county commission, urging them to approve the moratorium. The moratorium lasts until May 1 of next year, I believe, at which time local governments and law enforcement are expected to ask for an extension. 1, do you support public disclosure of existing dispensaries and knowledge of their effects? And is there a current law prohibiting such public disclosure? The second question, do you support a permanent moratorium or further moratorium extension on the dispensaries in the unincorporated areas of Deschutes County wide?
So currently, the public is entitled to know where the dispensaries are. They have to be registered.
Okay.
So that's the answer there. And I did urge the commissioners to vote in the moratorium, and I would support continuing that moratorium in the future when they next have an opportunity to rule on it. I believe that, again, as I said earlier, that the issue is just access. We have, I think there are at least 12 dispensaries just in the city of Bend right now. And pretty soon we may already have more dispensaries than pharmacies if you look at the number of medical marijuana card holders in Deschutes County. It's like we're going to have a dispensary for every 20 or something. But I want to respond if I can quickly, John.
Quickly, please.
Very quickly, because it is important that you understand the core functions of the district attorney. The function of the district attorney and his or her office is defined in the Oregon Constitution and in Oregon law. You didn't get to make it up as you go along. That's one point I'd like you to take home this evening. The other point is this. I and my deputy district attorneys and my staff, my victims assistance staff, are involved in numerous collaborative efforts designed to prevent crime out of the community. And it ranges from multidisciplinary task forces for child abuse and elder abuse, to the Domestic Violence Council, to work with nonprofits like Saving Grace on domestic violence issues, and the Kids Center when it comes to child abuse, physical and sexual abuse. And we also work with other groups that are discouraging kids from beginning to use alcohol and tobacco and so forth. We go out to the schools. We attend the Safe School Alliance. I'm a member of that. I always have a representative there, usually a juvenile prosecutor. We are out of the community, but the DA's function is defined by the law, and we are at capacity, I can tell you right now, with a number of unfunded state mandates that we must do. And there isn't time for some of the meetings, the political meetings, that my opponent believes would somehow miraculously prevent crime here. So,
John,
thank you for letting me address that.
I need to go back, and this is why we're going to have a crossfire afterwards. I need to go back to the marijuana, okay? Tomorrow night, George, the city council, I believe, 6:30 p.m., is going to be taking public comment on the marijuana issue. Am I correct so far?
We actually have two issues, but go ahead.
Okay, well, that will be covered, right? I'm going to encourage every one of us to try to get to that meeting, because what I heard, I forget if it was on radio or whatever, from the city manager was that they don't feel as though they're getting enough public comment on it. And I think that's a darn shame. It's part of our civic duty to get out there. And along those lines, I would encourage the two of you to be there at that meeting to say what you think, if you can possibly fit it into your schedule. So I just had to get that plug in, because George, you pay me for those plugs, don't you? No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't pay me for anything. Now, I got another one of those doozies for John.
Cards aren't very long when it comes
Yours
to...
are extremely long, you know? If you think they're long, if we have let the audience members ask these questions, they're even longer, much longer. Many of the endorsements you've received give us cause to be concerned about the DA's office under you would revert back to the era of political activism. You've received endorsement from progressive activists, including Kitzhaber's girlfriend, Mike Dugan, and Judy Stigler, the former Bend House rep who never saw a tax hike she didn't vote for. So you managed to raise a lot of eyebrows. Couple these leftist endorsements with the fact that during your campaign you repeatedly stressed how you want to get out of the office, meet with the community. So some have theorized, and we, there's conspiracy theorists here, that given your limited prosecutorial, I gotta teach me how to say these words, credentials, you might recruit Mike Dugan to run the DA's legal operation while you devote your attention to what you believe you're good at, being a community organizer. So how do you address these concerns and convince voters that you intend to put public safety ahead of your desire for community consensus building? That's 18 questions in there, folks. Give it a shot, Josh.
Thanks. I love this question. If I had no endorsements, I could imagine the question. You have no support in the community. How do you think you can be district attorney if no one supports you in the community? I've got over 200 endorsements. Oh, you are very political because you have all these endorsements. And so when you get 200 endorsements, you can pick people from any persuasion. The questioner, and thank you for the question, whoever that was, picked a few liberal people. They didn't pick Bob Everhart. I noticed that. Well, I don't know why. They didn't pick Ken Mullinex, the mayor of Lapine. No call Ken a lefty liberal. They didn't pick the 50 or 75 other conservative people. They didn't pick the 100 moderates. I'm proud to have support from liberals, moderates, conservatives. I've got support all throughout this county, okay? And I'm proud of that. I didn't get that support by just sitting on my butt. I got that support by calling up people, going down, meeting, talking to them, listening to them, sharing my vision for Deschutes County, asking them what their vision is for Deschutes County. So I don't really, no, there was a specific question. Am I going to hire Mike Dugan? No. So there you go, there's that answer. Well, I feel like I'm rambling now. I'm proud of the support I get from across the political spectrum, from north, south, east, and west in this county. And there you go. The questioner picked out a few liberal people. I can list 100 conservative people. Go to my website and see the whole list of 200 people. So, thank you.
Thank you, John. That was a tough one. I want to ask this of you too, John, because before we get away from marijuana, one of the ideas that you've mentioned in the chamber debate was that any taxes from marijuana sales should go exclusively toward drug treatment programs. How do you rationalize increasing the potential for drug dependence through marijuana legalization with funding programs meant to reduce usage of marijuana and other drugs? On the one side, we push drug usage, then we try to pull them away from drugs. Can you understand how this push-pull thinking fails the common sense smell test?
Good, and we kind of touched on this before. If we're going to legalize marijuana, only we're going to do it. It's going to be a vote of the people, so we're going to decide what we want. What I've said in the debate, the last debate, and what I've said here, if we legalize marijuana, the money has to go to drug treatment, to law enforcement, and to youth programs. My fear, that the reason I said this was, and here's my take on how government works. You get new tax dollars, and if it's not for a dedicated purpose, it kind of disappears in the general fund. It just disappears, and you never know where it ends up. And so if we're going to legalize marijuana, if we decide to do that, that money better go to law enforcement, drug treatment, and youth programs, because marijuana can create problems, and the money better go to address those problems. So that's the answer there.
But I don't get it. Legalization can cause problems.
Well, that's a reason to vote no.
Why are we legalizing?
That's a reason to vote no. I said if in our wisdom we decide to legalize it, you're going to hear me say that money that is raised from it better go to law enforcement, youth programs, and drug treatment. For that very reason, it's going to cause more problems.
Okay. Patrick, are you growing grass over there? Let's see. What in your record can prove to our voters that you're tough on criminals?
Well, you can look at any aspect of my record, I think, to see that I'm tough on criminals. My record goes back to 1989, January in Lincoln County, where I started out as a deputy district attorney. Down there, I was part of the team that created LINT, the Lincoln Interagency Narcotics Team, so I began prosecuting drug cases fairly soon after arriving in Lincoln County. had the opportunity to prosecute felony assault and kidnapping when I was in Lincoln County, along with doing support enforcement and commercial fishing and fishing game and juvenile, kind of whole gamut. When I came here in '92, actually the chief deputy who'd been my chief deputy in Lincoln County was over here in Deschutes as the chief deputy. Josh Marquis was his name. And I picked up his caseload, which had some very challenging cases. One of them was a nobody murder case. That was a great team effort that took, probably almost 2 years from the investigation to getting it into trial, and that was successful. And from there, I became chief deputy district attorney. I led the felony trial team. That's actually when my leadership experience that counts started, when I led the felony prosecutors back in the mid-90s. And I had the opportunity to prosecute serial rape, child sex abuse cases, homicide. The list really goes on. If you look at my record, if you talk to a judge or talk to a police officer, they will tell you that, I had a high degree of success with all those cases. What's important, though, too, is not just being tough on crime, it's being fair-minded and exercising prosecutorial discretion effectively, fairly. And I believe that is why I have the endorsement of the Then Police Officers Association, the Deschutes County Sheriff's Association, my deputy district attorneys and chief deputies, Crime Victims United, and other community leaders in Deschutes County as well, because they know that I'm dedicated and committed, that I'm tough on crime, but I'm fair-minded, and that we put a lot of effort into exercising prosecutorial discretion according to the law.
Okay. Are we enjoying, not enjoying is not the word, are we benefiting from this so far? I don't want to go too much longer without having Nancy come up. Nancy, you're in the back room, aren't you? I see a smiling face. Somebody had some nice compliments to pay you, and you weren't even here to hear them. But they said something along the lines of, if you looked in the dictionary under absolutely wonderful government employee that helps us out, we'd see your picture, and somehow we want to clone you and send you to Multnomah County. Gentlemen, can you give her a microphone? Okay.
I'd have to say that this is my home, so I don't plan on moving anywhere. I just came tonight to let you know that if you are not registered to vote, that you still have time. You have to be registered in Oregon by the 21st day prior to the election. So that is Tuesday, April, now I forgot the date, but it's the last Tuesday in April is the deadline. If you are currently registered in Oregon and just need to update, you've moved from one location to another, even if you are in an apartment building and you change your apartment numbers, ballots are not forwardable. That's part of the security part of that, and you would need to update your voter registration. So I have brought some voter registration cards. I'll leave them in the back.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And the other thing that is particularly interesting with the upcoming primary is the primary is the only time that the ballot you receive is based on party designation. So if you are interested in changing your party, you need to do that by 5 p.m. on that 21st day prior to the election. Otherwise, it will not count. And there is no limit as to how many times you can change your party, so that's totally up to you. But to get a specific ballot in May, the election is May 20th, you'd need to select your party at that point. Is there any questions before?
If you've moved from another state, does Oregon send the other state?
We encourage the voter who is registering to let us know so that we can do that, yes.
So go ahead, George.
When are you going to mail out the ballots for the May election?
They have deadline for us. They moved it back, not knowing what the post office structure will be doing, so we will be mailing them out approximately May 1st.
So the situation is, we have, I believe, 5 Republicans running in the Senate primary for U.S. Senator. A lot of our members have said bye-bye to the Republican Party and have registered as independents or non-affiliated. This is a really important election. There's some really interesting candidates who probably have a slim but a chance to unseat the current senator. So it's so easy for you to just go in and change it, right? Nancy? And then change back if you want to. You can do it on the internet, correct?
Right, you can go online to www.oregonvotes with an S, oregonvotes.gov, and update your voter registration. You can use a paper, old-fashioned type as well, and or you can come into our office. City Hall, the library, DMV, they all carry voter registration cards.
Okay.
One more quick about proof of citizenship, like you're back in Alabama. Well, if you got to show proof that you are an American citizen, are we doing that in Oregon now, or what?
Oregon law requires that you check the box that you are a U.S. citizen or not, and that you are of age. So those are the requirements in the state of Oregon.
Not like in Oregon, where you got to bring your birth certificate, you know, your discharge papers and so on. So
That's correct.
just about anybody could go.
Well, you do, if you're new to Oregon, you have to provide us with your Oregon driver's license. If you do not have that, or an Oregon ID, then you have to provide us with your last 4 digits of your social security number. And that's what Oregon law is today.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Nancy, for coming. Please stick around because we're only beginning. John, you're on the hot seat, and I still want to leave you some time for the crossfire. Another example of how we're a politically incorrect zone here. Do you consider illegal immigrants to be a problem in Central Oregon? Notice we don't call undocumented anything. So that's the first part. And then quick oppose or favor on voter ID laws, driver's licenses for illegals, in-state tuition for illegals, amnesty for illegals, and finally, Bend becoming a sanctuary city such as Portland. Can I go over those one
I
by
think maybe
one?
we'll have to walk you through.
How do you feel overall about the subject of illegal immigration in Central Oregon? Do you think, is there a problem there?
There's a problem when people commit crimes in Central Oregon, wherever you're from. If you commit crimes and you're not a U.S. citizen, you need to be deported after you serve your penalty here. There's an issue that sometimes people want to deport before the penalty is served here. The problem with that is if you deport, the person, when they go to their home country, may be let out of jail right away and wouldn't serve the punishment. So it's a cost issue. If we hold them here and serve their punishment here, it costs us more. But if you want to punish appropriately, you have to punish here and then deport. So I support deportation when they commit crimes, but punish here first.
John, just a back and forth on that.
Yeah.
Quickly. Isn't the fact that someone is in this country illegally a crime?
It depends. In some situations, yes. If someone was here illegally once and was deported and comes back, that's an illegal re-entry, and that in itself is a federal crime. If someone's here for the first time illegally, with a lot of exceptions, federal immigration law is complicated. It's often not a crime, but you can be deported. You can always be deported for it if you're not here illegally. The crime usually happens when you come back after having been deported.
Okay, voter ID laws, oppose or favor?
Oppose.
Okay, driver's licenses for illegals.
Not sure. Leaning support, but not sure.
So you're leaning in favor.
Yes.
In-state tuition for illegals.
Support.
No, guys, this is, we need to understand this. Amnesty for illegals.
Could you describe that?
Well, let's say the DREAM Act that Congress said we're not going to pass, and then our buddy Obama said, well, we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, I have a problem with this, and I talked about this earlier when attorney generals or prosecutors or judges try to make laws. The law right now says who can be here legally and who can't. I don't think the president should create law. So I disagree with those programs. Even though I might like the law to be something else, president, attorney general can't make the law, so I don't agree with that.
Okay, would you like to see Bend become another Portland, become a sanctuary city?
And that's, the sanctuary city is when the city says they're gonna tell their police officers not to
Not to do a
involve
darn
in
thing.
immigration law.
Not to do a darn, that's exactly right.
Well, this is a challenging one because local police officers can't legally enforce immigration law anyway. The question is, if someone goes to the jail and they're at the jail, the sheriff's deputy has to ask for the person's ID, check their background, and that's where it can pop up that someone's there illegally. If you get that information, you have to report it to immigration. That's their current status, and that's the way that it should be.
How many in the room would like to see Sheriff Joe Arpaio be the next governor of our state? I couldn't resist that, that was too much fun. Okay. I have some more questions, but I don't think it's fair not to let them have some crossfire time. So let me just take a quick scan. And I know I haven't gotten to all your questions. I'm really sorry. This came up on a few, so I kind of feel obligated to mention this and get John's opinion on it. On the subject of gay marriage, you joined those in the voters' pamphlet who opposed the constitutional amendment restricting marriage to a male and a female. The list opposing the amendment read like a who's who of the progressive movement: Oregon Education Association, Planned Parenthood, Alliance for Social Justice, Governor Kulongoski, SEIU Unions 49 and 501, Deschutes Democrats, Kate Brown, and the Westside National Organization for Women. We're all known by the company you keep. Do you regret your decision or not?
Do I regret my decision to stand up for gay rights?
Right.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I support equality for everyone. You've heard me say that. I don't apologize for that, but I do respect people who disagree with that. I work with people every day who disagree with my philosophical issues, and I respect that. My parents are two of those who disagree with me on this, and I love them dearly. We're changing as a society. Look at the polls 10 years ago where we are, and we're here now. And even though we're changing, there's still many people who, for religious reasons, moral reasons, or just that's the way it's always been in their life, that's how they feel. And they're going to feel differently than me. And I respect them, I love them, and I'm fine with that. But I have a belief in my heart that we're all equal, and I'm not shy about standing up for it. But this gives you some insight into me as a leader. I've told you, I do not like it when the Attorney General says she's not going to defend the law. The law in Oregon right now is that marriage is between a man and a woman. I disagree with that law, but the Attorney General should go into court and defend it, because that's her job. That tells you something about me, okay? I can separate my personal views from the views of the office, and I'll continue to do that, but I do support gay rights.
John, and I appreciate the fact that you're able to share with the group how you feel. Here's one. You know, we all do things in life that people don't like. Sometimes we regret them, sometimes we just say the heck with them. More of the heck with it kind of guy. While on the city council, you refused to attend a Patriots Day celebration put on by the Bend Ministerial Association because you considered it to be overly Christian slanted. In retrospect, do you regret your decision?
Yeah, I remember that very well, that event. The city council was invited to attend. I appreciated the invitation. We did some investigation, and it was going to be an overtly Christian event. Absolutely nothing against religion. If it was non-denominational religion, I would have been there. And if there's going to be a Christian event, I support that fully. Great for the Christian faith, have that event. But for a government official, representative, to participate in an event that is Christian-based, to me, that was endorsing one religion over another. And I stand up for religious freedom, religious liberty, and to defend constitutions, and I'm not going to pick and choose winner and loser religions. What if that event was a Muslim event? Perhaps people might have felt differently. It would have been the same position. Any religion you could pick, I'm not going to pick winners and losers among religion. I've been to non-denominational religious events as a leader, and that's fine. I have no problem with that, and I have no problem with one faith holding an event. I never said they shouldn't be allowed to hold their event. That's great. I said thank you for the invitation. I hope it turns out really well, and from everything I could tell, it did turn out really well. So no, I don't want to regret picking it because I thought it was too focused on one particular religion.
Okay. Patrick, I'm going to throw you a softball. It's okay if I throw a softball. You got to go once in a while. Are you concerned?
He gets a softball?
He's getting a softball. Hey, these are for the Patriot members. What am I supposed to say? What you don't know, and I think you need to know this, and I respect John because of it. John was the person that came to me or your campaign staff and said, Bob, can I be on the Red Patriot program? Now, I honor him for doing that. Okay? Okay, so here's a softball. Be giveth and be taketh away, right?
Played hardball for a few
And
years.
then we're going to go into crossfire. Are you concerned that electing John would be a backward step leading to repoliticalization of the office?
Yes, I think I've made that pretty clear, that he is a politician and a very good one. And he appears, because of all the moving around that he does, he seems to move every 2 to 3 years. He's had several jobs in the last, 12 years or so, that he will use this office as a stepping stone. He's not a prosecutor. He doesn't have any leadership experience or management experience when it comes to a district attorney's office. And so we know that he's not committed to public safety. For that very reason, he's never been a prosecutor or a police officer. Or he'll tell us that he's applied for a position and didn't get it, but he appears to have just made this decision a few months ago when he returned to Bend. So I am very concerned about that. When I look at some of the endorsements coming out of Salem, and I know that 1 or 2 of those endorsements are probably endorsing him because of the strong stance I took on House Bill 3194, which was an effort to undermine Measure 11. It would have taken sex abuse in the first degree out of Measure 11. I strongly oppose that. I was one of 10 or 11 DAs, along, I might say, with all of our legislators that opposed House Bill 3194 from beginning to the end, the 13th rendition of it, or whatever it was that finally passed. So I do have that concern, and I'll maybe address that here in a couple of minutes in Crossfire.
It seems to me that you probably have started the crossfire with that. and what sounds fair as far as timing on the crossfire to go back and forth? 2 minutes apiece? We'll start with that and see how far we go. John, why don't you go first and whatever. I'll see if I can get my phone to work.
Thanks for coming out, everyone. Patrick, did you have any regrets during your time in office as the elected district attorney?
Do I have any regrets about the functioning of my office? No, I'm extraordinarily proud of my office, and I believe that the endorsements that I have from my staff and from the law enforcement associations speak to that. I made some difficult decisions for you in following through with what I promised to do if you elected me. And I stood my ground on that because I'm a prosecutor, not a politician. Now, my wife would tell you that I'm certainly far from perfect. I make mistakes. But I want to be extremely clear, the 3 deputy district attorneys that filed the lawsuit that the state settled over my objection, those were not mistakes, I'd make those decisions over again in a heartbeat. And in no small reason, my staff really needed to have those individuals out of the office. That's something that isn't very well appreciated. If you think that's not true, then by all means talk to one of my deputy district attorneys or one of my chief deputies and see what they tell you.
And can I just get a clarification before we go on with this? Have you made news tonight with these endorsements? Because I don't remember hearing those before. Is this?
Well, that's, I certainly have not made a media release because I've been focused on the work of the office, and so.
Because John, and I think rightfully so, has promoted the endorsements that he's gotten from some really good people, not just the three that we mentioned in my question. But, I think that's interesting for the voter. Do you agree?
I just ask everybody to appreciate that I've been working for you in the DA's office, and I can tell you some stories about that. Each time I've attempted to get out and meet with the group for a political endorsement, whereas I know my opponent here has been doing nothing but. So it doesn't surprise me, he's right. Any one of you, if you spent the number of hours that he spent over the last several months, could go around the community and get 175 or 200 endorsements for political offices too.
Okay, now you go against John, right? You say something nasty about John now? Is that how it works? You challenge John. Will you challenge?
So, very well. So, at the last debate, you made a statement that you had never been a prosecutor. And I asked you a question about that because earlier in one of your announcement statements, you said that you enjoy standing up for public safety when you were a prosecutor. Did I miss something there?
You did. I don't know if you miss. I've never been a prosecutor, and I never said I've been a prosecutor, so I don't understand where you got that from.
So, do you remember at the last debate I asked you the question about your jury trial experience?
I do.
I asked you the number of criminal jury trials that you had under your belt. And do you remember that you did not answer that question?
What's your question, Patrick?
How many criminal jury trials have you done as a trial lawyer?
In my 12 years of criminal law experience, I've handled approximately 1,000 cases and have tried approximately 50 to 100 jury trials.
Okay, so I noticed that statement seems to change depending upon who you're talking to, John. You told the Bulletin that you had over 100 criminal jury trials while you were with Crabtree and Ramsdorf, which is the public defender firm Ben, and that was what, 5 years?
Patrick, I didn't say that. Okay, this is
Okay.
getting a little inappropriate here.
What about LinkedIn, John? Did you fill out your LinkedIn profile?
Patrick, what's the question?
Did you fill out your LinkedIn profile?
Patrick, what's the question?
That is the question. One at a time here.
Patrick, I've tried approximately 50 to 100 jury trials. I haven't gone back to every court where I've tried cases and pulled the files out of archives.
You've never tried a case anywhere outside of Oregon.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And so if somebody searched OJA, they would find the number of trials that you tried, correct?
They would find the number of trials where my name is indicated. You know that as a public defender, oftentimes the person's name who's indicated is the person who makes the first appearance, even when a new attorney takes it over.
Right.
But they would see every case where my name was listed.
Like if you submitted jury instructions.
That often doesn't change it. Patrick, I was in the courtroom a few weeks ago. One of the deputy district attorneys you fired, Jody Vaughn, there was a case up on the board that had her name as the prosecuting attorney. Okay, people can be on a case early and then stay on it even when new attorneys get on there.
Yeah, that's not my question though, because see, I was here, as you know,
Right?
in '92 until you left.
Yes.
And I never saw you in court trying a case. You never tried a case against me. None of my prosecutors, say maybe one, can remember ever having a case with you.
Oh,
You were in Crook in Jefferson County, right?
Patrick, we're really going to do this here? We're going to talk about the attorneys in your office I've tried cases against. I've tried cases in Cook County. I've tried cases in Jefferson County. I've tried cases in Washington County. Patrick, people are tired of this aggressive, like, stance you're taking here.
Bullying,
What's the
right?
question? I've tried 50 to 100 jury trials.
Well, nobody can find that record, John, and I guess it goes to this. First, you make statements that
Patrick,
fluff up
this is
your
serious,
record.
Patrick.
It is serious.
What's
You
your-
told the
what's your
source
claim?
that you were a
How many-
prosecutor.
How many cases have I tried?
You tell me.
I told you, you're saying it's wrong. Tell the people how many cases I've tried.
You told Ben Bulletin.
I'm telling right now the voters how many
Okay.
cases I've tried.
Yeah. You told the Ben Bulletin over 100.
Patrick,
Okay.
how
When
many
you
cases have
testified
I
against
tried?
Jessica's
Patrick,
law.
how many cases have I tried?
No. You need to answer that question.
You are calling me a
Mr.
liar, Patrick.
Well,
I've given my
Well,
answer.
I'm suggesting
You need
that
to
you're
tell.
fluffing your qualifications
How
because
many
you know
cases
how
have I
important it
tried?
is to have that trial experience.
I think the
And
fact
get on
that you
that
know-
way.
the fact
Okay,
that you know my
okay.
answer tells us a lot.
Before we have to call security, it is just, let's just cool it a little bit. Not much, just a little bit. And John, do you have something to say to Patrick? In a constructive way.
No, I don't have another question. I'm fine getting them to challenge each other. That's fine. He implied to you I'm a liar. He has no facts to back it up. Okay?
Well, here's some facts right here,
Wait a
John.
minute, Patrick.
So, when you announced that you were seeking the DA's office, you were interviewed by the source.
I was.
And you remember making a statement, quote, "As a prosecutor, I love standing up for public safety."
Patrick, I never made that statement to the source, and it wouldn't be the first time the source has made a mistake. I've never been a prosecutor.
The paper that voted you man of the year?
Patrick,
You're
I
kidding.
never said I was a prosecutor. Okay, that's absurd.
You didn't read, that's what it says.
Patrick,
Okay, we're
I
starting
never
to
said I was
lose,
a
we're
prosecutor.
starting to lose the audience. So let us please get focused.
Okay.
And I'm not sure whose turn it is to go. But John, come at him. Nicely.
No, I think I've made my point. I'm happy to respond to anything Patrick has to say.
Okay,
Well,
Patrick.
John, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm concerned though because, you see, my focus has always been on the function of the DA's office as it's defined in Oregon law. And I know how well that I and my staff perform that function. And so when people look at your claims to be a criminal law expert, they naturally look at statements you make that would imply that you've been a prosecutor, because that, you would agree, would be pertinent if you had prosecution experience. So that is why I asked the question. It's the same with management. There seems to be inconsistencies where at one point you say you managed a staff of 50. That's what you said when you announced that you managed a staff of 50 over in Liberia. But when you talked to the source while you were actually in Liberia, you told them that you had a staff of 12. And they're little things, John, but they seem to be misrepresentations. I don't believe it's fair to the voters to have you misrepresent your qualifications. It's just like with your management experience on the city council. You're responsible for millions and millions of dollars being squandered and not in a settlement over which you have no control. You had control over the litigation. You told the voters in Bend when the bus fiasco first came up that, oh boy, we're going to sue them and we're going to get all of our money back. And then you left town, you quit your post. And you know what happened? The city lost that lawsuit, John, and it cost the city several $1 million. So,
Okay, thanks for the
Okay.
question.
But, you know,
Is that a closing argument or a question?
I think we're going around and around. Okay? If you want to continue with the crossfire, we can, but we've got about 6 minutes left, and that's even that is stretching it. So what I'd like to do is give you a choice. Do you want to continue with the crossfire, or would you like to take turns with closings? What do you
I was
say?
going to say, if anybody has questions from
Yeah, I
the
think
audience
they're-
that they could ask, I'd be happy to.
They're getting a little weary on that. So,
What is it, beautiful?
so let's see, Patrick went first on the open, so you go last. So John,
Me first.
chance to open, try to make it 2 minutes, please.
I'll be short. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks for hosting. And we got a little sideways here at the end. Know this, I've practiced criminal law in this community for 12 years, in the courtroom on a daily basis. Talk to judges, deputy district attorneys, DAs, I try cases all the time. I know what to try a case. Patrick can't give you, he says, implies what I'm saying is wrong. He can't tell you how many cases I've tried. I've tried approximately 50 to 100 trials, and that's the fact. But here's also the fact. If I'm elected to be your district attorney, I'm going to listen to every one of you. We're going to work together. I'm going to be part of a team. Law enforcement, drug and alcohol, mental health, community leaders, neighborhood associations, elected officials. We're going to work to prevent crime, and when people commit crime, we're going to prosecute them aggressively. We're going to keep our community safe. We're going to keep this the best place in the country to live and raise a family. I'm going to manage that office right. We're not going to have mismanagement that costs over $1 million to the taxpayers. I'm going to get in there. I'm probably going to be a boring district attorney. I'm going to focus on the nuts and bolts. I'm not going to be reading about me in the paper every day. I'm going to always remember that the government's money is the people's money. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to make you proud. And if you elect me, I'd be honored to represent you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. So I would ask you to look at the core functions of the DA's office and judge me and my office based upon our performance there. We are out in the community. We run a mental health court, a domestic violence court. If you go to our website, the campaign website or the office website, you can get more information about that or call me. I'm dedicated and committed to the prosecution function. My record demonstrates my commitment. And if you do your research, you will see that my office has been very successful and will continue to be very successful protecting you and your loved ones. You need to have a district attorney that understands what to do when he gets the call at 2:30 in the morning and there's a murder. You need a district attorney who knows how to take care of the 11-year-old girl that's been tortured for 15 months. The DA must have that level of experience in order to lead the prosecutors in the office. There's just no other way that it can be done. And I would ask you to, again, just please do your research. If you have any questions about who is most qualified to run the DA's office, please give me a call. I've been honored to do this work, and I hope to have the honor and privilege to continue.
You did a great job, guys, and not easy. This is hot up here. John just said that was fun. His idea of fun is not my idea of fun. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it.